I'm seeing how many of you are actually taking the photo. That's my high-tech presentation, a Word document. Yeah, take a picture of that. No, we have much more in store for you than that. The reason I do this, I took every single link that I talk about, every single tool that I talk about, every primer, every resource, and I put it on one web page. So one thing I go around to do a lot of these trainings, and I also attend a lot of trainings. One thing I always hate is people will sit up there and, oh, look at this website, oh, look at that website, and I'm busy trying to write them all down. We've done that for you. Everything is at that first URL, MikeReilley.com. Please forgive the weird spelling. It's my grandparents' fault. And then the second one is spj.org/google.asp. We do these trainings all over the country. It's part of Google News Labs. Professor Wanger's part of it. I do about 4 or 5 of these a month. We go around to J schools, we go around to conferences, we go around to newsrooms all over the country and train people on how to use all these free Google tools. I noticed they mentioned fundraising earlier, so we can go out and buy a lot of these tools. The Google tools we train you on today and also this afternoon over at the Student Media Center are all free, so they're priced right. And the last one there is it's tinyurl/spj Google. That's a little evaluation form, and if you promise to fill that out, Scout's honored, by the end of the day, we'll do a little drawing. I've got my little world champion Chicago Cubs hat here. I'm from Chicago. A few blocks from the Walmart, Cubs fan. Yes, thank you very much. You drop your business card in here, or just scribble your name down on a sheet of paper. We'll do a drawing. 2 people that promise to fill out the evaluation form. We have these nice Google News Lab mouse pads for you, so we'll have a little fun with that. Right at the end of the session, when she flashes 5 minutes at me, we'll do the drawing and we'll share our winners. And they mentioned the Meek data hashtag, and I really appreciate having that because usually I come into these sessions and I have to make up a hashtag, but you guys already had it in place. So thanks, and please do share anything that I put up here today for you. I'm also tweeting a bunch of stuff out during the presentation, links to various resources, things like that. So feel free to retweet those as well. This is Journalist Toolbox. It's a website I founded 20 years ago, 20th anniversary on January 4th. It is now housed at the Society of Professional Journalists. It was previously at the American Press Institute, and then they sold it to SPJ in 2007. It's updated twice a week, but also in between with breaking news. It's got everything from election resources to covering weather, public records databases, data viz tools page, which I'm tweeting out, all kinds of really fun little tools and resources. My Twitter handle is @JournToolbox. Yes, I am wearing the exact same stuff in this photo as I am now. I just realized that. It's really, I have other clothes, seriously. And I tweet all things journalism here. I try not to clog up your Twitter feed too badly, but I do share a lot of stuff about data viz and just journalism in general, you know, an interesting article I find or something like that. So you expect about 5 or 6 a day from me. This is the page, the MikeReilley.com Google News Lab page I mentioned to you. As you scroll down here, I've actually Google mapped all of the places I've traveled so far. Just in the last 6 months. But in here is what you're really interested in. These are all the primers, tip sheets. When we tear up some data this afternoon, a lot of those databases are right here. Every link and tool that I talk about in the session are right on this one page. So it's kind of one-stop shopping for you. But this morning's session, we're talking about 2 tools, Google Trends and Google Maps. And both are 2 of the more popular Google tools along with Fusion tables that are out there. And they're pretty intuitive to use. You know, there's some things will trip you up here and there on Google Maps, but we'll cover all of that. And again, I've got the URL up there, and again, tweet to Meek data. A little bit about why we're here. A sec, we might have to go old school with this. For some reason it's not kicking over to Google's mission is to organize and make information accessible and universally useful to people, and that's really something we've been doing as journalists for quite some time. And what we're going to cover today are a couple of these different areas, which is tools through Google News Labs and through data. They also have some programs and things they do on YouTube. This in the example that's up there is Storyful's fact-checking channel, which we do trainings on those as well. But tools and data are two of the more popular areas of Google News Labs. And Google News Labs is organized to do two things twofold. One is to get journalists and journalism educators out into the industry, teaching journalists how to use these tools. You'd be amazed how many professional journalists aren't using these tools at all right now. And so we go out and we train them, but we also get feedback back from you on how we can improve these tools. How can we change the interface for Google Maps so it works better? Why doesn't this tool do this? We take that information, we put it in a little form and send it back to Google, but we also meet with them at the mothership out in Mountain View, California, once or twice a year, and talk about, here's some things that you can change about your tools, because the developers there are brilliant people, but they're not journalists. They don't think about things the way we do with data and about mapping and geolocation the way we do. This is the Google News Lab homepage, g.co/newslab. Very short URL, and again, I link to it off of my page as well at MikeReilley.com. Our first tool is Google Trends, google.com/trends. And with any Google URL, you can also get there through trends.google.com. So either one will get you there. This tool tracks what people are searching for in Google. And it gives you a tool then to take that mound of data that you've accumulated and take it and visualize it and embed it right in your web page. It's all browser-based tool. As you can see here, there are a lot of people searching on Google, and if you want to better understand your audience and what people are searching for on Google, this tool is invaluable, because that's a big part of what we're doing as journalists now. There's been that shift to audience engagement and doing more listening to the reader and to your audience, and this tool I think is a good way to do that. We use Google search for a lot of different things. Why am I feeling? And we get all of the above is basically my week. Tired all the time, sad, nauseous, sick. Yeah, there we go. You can also type in how do you convert to, and it will give you a bunch of religions, and then PDF is the last one on the list typically. So how do I convert? PDF apparently is a religion. But Google search, you get what you put into it. If you type in the word bears, it's going to give you anything from polar bears to grizzly bears to the Chicago Bears. So you have to be very specific in your search about what you're looking for. You need a full name. You need a specifics, because search engines are dumb. They're literal. They will look for exactly what you type in. And this is the Google Trends interface. And the great thing about Google Trends is it allows you to create your own graphics. Google prepares a few pre-made graphics for you across the top of the interface. You see the State of the Union and the NCAA basketball tournament, and then also gives you some other trending stories. These are just ones that their editors pre-select and post there, and you can take and embed them in your site. Some of them are a little more pop culture. There was a huge elections section that we've had up there for quite some time. But the real power of this tool comes in that little search field at the very top, which we're going to play around with in just a minute. We're actually going to use it. That tool allows you to create your own graphs and your own searches of this Google database. It also allows you to download a CSV file, so you can pull the data out of the Google database, take that CSV file, sort it, play with it, and do something else with it. What does Google Trends measure? It's measuring how many people are searching for a specific topic, whatever you type in, and it measures it against the total number of searches that are being conducted at that moment in time. The number that's assigned to it is normalized. It's not a percentage. It's a percentage of all searches at the time, but the statistic itself is just a value. So this is the textbook definition of it. It's a percentage of high volume and high trending searches and compares them to searches occurring at that time. So you'll see down the right hand or left hand side, they typically will have numbers down here. And those are values, those aren't percentages. So the data is updated all the way up to the last 3 to 5 minutes. It has minute by minute granularity now, so you can really break down and see, on election night, what was that moment that Trump spiked, or what was that moment that Clinton's name spiked. And here's some of the interesting uses for it. This is one during the House gun control sit-in. People were searching for the term periscope sit-in. And as you can see, it flatlines. Nobody was really searching for that topic until the news started to break. You saw a little blip, and then boom, it spiked and then began to settle back down. So that's kind of a simple use of it. This is a selfish one. This is a pre-made Chicago or a pre-made Google Trends one, and it allows you to look at maps. In this case, the Indians weren't too popular in Google search outside of Ohio, but it also gives it to you in a line chart form as well. This I thought was one of the more interesting ones. The top line, the red line, is searches for the flu. And those tend to be cyclical, flu season comes and goes, so you begin to see those peaks and valleys. But the measles, which is the blue line, kind of flat lines. Measles aren't very common anymore. Early 2015, there was a measles outbreak, and it actually surpassed the number of people searching for the flu. Which was an interesting little visualization. And if you go to a lot of the blogs on WashingtonPost.com, you'll see these all the time. New York Times, the Upshot blog uses Google Trends quite a bit. This is one that one of our attendees for a session did a few months ago. I was down in Texas, and I was walking around the room, and I just kind of gave them a chance to play with the tool a little bit. And it was right after Pokemon came out and got big. And I think it illustrates in a very odd way how you can take apples and oranges topics and compare them and sometimes see some interesting things. So Pokemon Go, which was doing nothing until right after the 4th of July and became very popular. People were searching the term, how do I do Pokemon? How do I download it? They were asking all these questions of Google about it. But then you get to compare it with something that's cyclical, the peaks and valleys of people searching the term porn, which is a little more of a broad topic, whereas Pokemon Go is more specific. It's kind of just one of those odd, really weird comparisons. Very popular during the election. It also gives you can type in questions like why did, it'll give you the most popular questions being asked at that time. You can take and embed these in. I'd highly recommend following @Google Trends, the Twitter handle. They share this stuff all the time. I'll show you one a little bit from the South Carolina church shootings that was really, really good that they did. This is another election night one. And if you look at these questions, it's interesting. People are asking Google, what time is her press conference today? What will she do now? How much? Who, what, when, where, why, how much? Many of the questions we ask, our sources are the same questions people are asking of a search engine, which I think is interesting, and that helps give us a little more insight into our audience and what they're looking for and what they're thinking about. Again, here, classic example, who, what, when, where, and why, covering all that. What can you do with Google search? You can break it down by the state, now by the city level, some of the larger cities in various states. You can break down who's searching for what. This was a comparison of Breaking Bad versus Better Call Saul. Saul did quite well in the Pacific Northwest, but not very well elsewhere. This was an interesting one that New York Times Upshot blog did. They Googled Thanksgiving recipes by state and broke it down. Mississippi, I believe, is asparagus casserole. There we go. I don't know what's going on out west with frog-eye salad, but it seems to be pretty popular in Wyoming and Colorado and Idaho. Go figure. But they created this graphic in Illustrator. They didn't create this one in Google. But it kind of shows you how you can do something fun and kind of trendy with it. I've had some people that have gone through these training sessions with me and have gone on to build some of these. I'll show them to you in a little bit. Here's an interesting one that The Guardian did. I really like this one. It's just questions they were asking about their political candidates. How old's David Cameron? Is this candidate even British? It gives you some fun insight, and kind of a lighter look at it. And they did this little article and then embedded the common questions underneath it. And there's the Google Trends Twitter handle, which I highly recommend. So I'll hop out of this for a minute and jump over into Google Trends. There's the actual Twitter account. Great follow, and it just all they do is tweet out different trending searches. And then you could go in and tweak these and do them on your own as well. So you can come up with something similar to it, but maybe it's comparing it to something else. Here's the interface. And right now they've got Thanksgiving, NFL season, and a thing on gun control and gun shops on the upper right. And then it lists usually about 14, 15 things on the top level that are trending right now or popular. And usually you'll see sports and some pop culture in here. When Brangelina got divorced, we were in the middle of one of these training sessions, and oh my God, when they announced it just dominated Google Trends. So pop culture will kind of bubble up to the surface on Google Trends quite a bit. So, on election night, leading up to the election night, you can go in and you can search for Hillary Clinton, and you can compare how she's doing on Google search with Donald Trump. And this is just searches for those names, okay? And it'll give you this basic line chart. This is over the past 5 years. All your controls are in this little panel right here. And past 5 years is interesting. They're fairly low and it bubbled up at times. I assume some of this is probably, Celebrity Apprentice or when they first announced their campaign and things like that. And then you can see they build up. But you can adjust when or the time span that you want to measure on this. So we can go to the past 30 days. And this is worldwide. This is where I think it gets really interesting. You can search it worldwide. You can search it down to the state level, the country level, if you wanted to. So I can go to the US now and see past 30 days, what people are searching for there. And then we can go down to the state level as well. We just do that by clicking on these little arrows next to it. Going down, we'll find Mississippi on here. Okay, and then we can take it a step further, and we can go in and look at cities. And sorry, Oxford did not make the list. Biloxi's on there, Jackson. Most states, they have about 5 cities that are listed under each, and then some border states as well. Like in Chicago, if you're looking for Chicago, you'll see Gary, Indiana, and places like that. So, you can go in and break it down by the city level. Now, they're not quite to the zip code level or the county level yet. That's something they're discussing doing, and I think that would be really, really cool when we could break it down to that finite of a location, but the database and the interface aren't quite there yet. It's something I know that they've talked about. And again, you can kind of see the times and the days that they have done well here and when things peaked on election night. You can also search it by category or organize it by category. You can go into Google News and break it down by business news, health news, politics. That would be a logical one here. See if it changes much. You can also go in and organize it by different types of search, image searches, who's searching for their image more, YouTube search, who's searching for their video more, and so on. And you could compare more than just 2. You can put in, for those of you that are into marketing, let's say your product's launching and it's competing against other similar products. You want to see how many people are searching for your product. You can type in 5 or 6 things here. I had a marketing student that was in one of these sessions once, and he sat there and he was typing in all the different brands of shoes, because I think the new Nike shoe was coming out on the Kobe 2016 or whatever it is. And they were comparing it with launches from Under Armour and other brands, and you could see the peaks for each one at certain times. You could tell when that shoe launched, almost down to the minute. It was really, I think, an interesting use of it. So that's Google Trends. These are very easy to embed. You just click on the little 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, the little mini hamburger, and the embed code's right here. You can also share it over social media, and this is where you get the CSV file that you could download and sort. Embedding gives you 2 options, thank God. A desktop version that's a little wider, and then a mobile version, and it just kicks you into the little JavaScript right down here that you can cut and paste and embed into your site. So it's a very handy little tool to quickly capture and visualize what people are searching for on a certain topic at a certain time. And this is, I think, just data viz in its most basic form. Having a browser-based tool like this. This afternoon, we're going to play with one at Student Media called Google Public Data Explorer that allows you to take census data and Eurostat data and Bureau of Labor Statistics data and build similar graphics to this using big data and build those graphics right in your browser and embed them very similar to what I just showed you here. So cool little tool. Questions about Google Trends? Question, yes. Under the CSV file, you'll see the value that they assign to it that kind of makes it go up and down, but they're not giving you the full search number. And I've asked them why they haven't done that yet. That's one of the things I've told they're, quote, working on. That and the county data level is a common question as well. But we're getting to that. One of the reasons why, and this is what one of the developers told us, is the database is just so monstrous, you know. And keep in mind, Google's using this data to make evaluations and decisions about their products. So, you know, if you question the validity of it, you know, they're using the same data we're using. So, you know, I don't think they'd want to use anything that wasn't helpful to them. It's just being able to load all this and put it into a context of a simple tool for people to use, is a big chore. And it's something that is evolving. All these tools are evolving. You know, they'll move the buttons around, things will change on the interface all the time. What else? Other questions? Don't get all shy on me. Yeah. Great question. This came up, we were doing one of these trainings at the Chicago Tribune and Arlington Heights Daily Herald teamed up to do a training. We had about 30 reporters in the room. A lot of them were covering congressional races. I had a lot of political reporters in that one, so we took trends and we just kind of had playtime with it. And one of the reporters typed in, he had a really hotly contested district, typed in the two candidates' names. And as he looked through them and was looking, scrolling through and kind of looking at the dates of the peak searches, he found that one of his candidates had a peak date on search that there was absolutely no news going on about him. He was not announcing anything. He wasn't speaking anywhere that day. He thought it was peculiar that people were searching for that name at that point in time. It was a fundraiser, no anything. So that was going to become his story and his angle. And he wouldn't have been able to find that information any other way. Why are all these people searching for this person at a time when he's not really out making news or doing a stump speech or doing something peculiar as to why? So he's looking deeper into that person's schedule that day. He also downloaded the data. I'm still waiting to hear back from him to see what he did with it. But I think that's one example where you can go in and just really quickly mine information. I had a reporter take it from the paper in Bloomington, Indiana. I'll show you one of her maps in a minute, but she did Google Trends the night of the vice presidential debate. We had the training session the day before the vice presidential debate. It was huge for Indiana. You could see where Pence was getting more searches, and she searched all the border states too, and seeing a little more blue in this border state, or being Illinois. But all the other border states were very red. People were searching for Pence much more than they were for Tim. So that's a couple of quick examples. What else have we had people do? I mentioned the one about the shoe brands. I thought was a really good use of it. Another one. We searched. This was right when Colin Kaepernick was doing his protest. So we typed in Colin Kaepernick protest, and then we searched back a long way, about 2 years ago, and we typed in Tom Brady Deflategate and compared the two peaks of Deflategate and the peak for Kaepernick. Kaepernick just blew Deflategate away. Deflategate was more steady over time because it dragged out over nearly a year, well, a little over a year. But Deflategate had just happened, and it Deflategate, the protest had just happened. So it just, it spiked, and if you looked at it now, I'm sure it's leveled off and started to trickle off. But I thought that one was very clever too, and any sports site would be interested in something like that, being able to show, hey, people are a little more concerned about this controversy than the other, apparently. And if you're looking for story ideas with them, go into the Washington Post blogs. The Upshot uses it just about every day. There's all kinds of really cool ones in there. Other questions? Yes?
comparison, and I'm using the categories, and I was wondering what is that category telling me, but what it is linked to what in the information. This is because when you search, you don't search, you don't put sports. Okay, so what is it really telling me? Is the source of
What does it tell you? Are you asking about the source of the information?
we have these filters here worldwide of the time, and then we have these categories like arts and entertainment, colors, people. So when I find specifically say sports,
Right.
for University of Mississippi, Mississippi State, I can look for sports, and I have the concept. What is related to sport? The search, the source of the link, the result. I don't understand what.
Yeah. It categorizes some of the searches. You know, you can be at a sub-level page, and you know, it can be under a sports type category, and that's all that it's dropping in there. You'll see a lot of times you'll change categories, and the lines are very similar. That means, you know, the topic I gave you there, the subject I gave you there, were very broad with Clinton and Trump. But let's say we take it and we narrow it down to something, you know, sports related. I could look for it in the sports category, and the search would probably be pretty high. I could look under it in tech and shopping, and it probably wouldn't be, the numbers probably wouldn't reflect what they did under sports. So that you'd see more disparity between those. When I clicked through those earlier and showed you guys, they were somewhat similar. Same with the image search, the column next to it, the pull down next to it, where you have image search and you have video search, things like that. You know, it's how many people are typing it into YouTube search and searching for a YouTube video and clicking on it, that type of thing. So.
My question is more like when you look for images search, then you know that people is looking for images. So
Right.
I can link that search to images.
Yeah.
How can you link that search?
It tracks searches off of images.google.com, which is Google image search, or it searches it for YouTube. It's the YouTube search engine.
That is very clear. So how do they do it with the topics? How they know that this topic, this search is related to sport, for business, for us? How?
Right. It's through the category. They categorize them internally. Yeah, it's the best explanation I can give you.
To be categorized, the page of the result is categorized.
Right, right. As you see, when you type in the person's name, many times it'll have different categories right under it. It'll say presidential candidate. It'll say celebrity apprentice host or whatever, you know, for Trump. You know, president-elect it has now. So those, it'll drop those into various categories, and you can adjust those as you see fit. The most popular search is going through and looking at it in Google News category, or through image search, or through YouTube search. Those are the three most popular I've seen used in trends. Yeah?
Is it possible for Google Trends to tie searches to IP addresses? And I was just thinking like the congressional races, and just in light of the exit polls, and just how it just seems like the media was really surprised.
Yeah.
You know, could really predict. Do you think that Google Trends could be used to more accurately predict presidential?
Yeah, it's an interesting use of it, and that's one of the things I've asked them about the county level and zip code level, being able to dig down that far. You know, all this is done off IP addresses. That's how they know where how they're able to get it down to the state and city level. You know, I'd love to see that granularity at some point out of them. I do know that it's a huge task to be able to break it down into that level of detail, make it work in a browser-based data viz interface. But I'd love to see that, and I think one of the things that could spur them to get after that a little bit more is exactly what we saw last week, and be able to compare those. But at least you can get it down to the state and to the city level, and I think that can give you some insight into what people were searching versus how they voted. You can also do the how did type questions into it. and get those questions people were asking state by state after the election. I imagine it probably differed in Illinois, which was a blue state, than it did in a lot of the border states, Indiana and some of the states down to the south of Illinois. Yeah.
What percentage of all search is Google? And do you have any info on like profiles or characteristics of people that search on Google versus Bing or Yahoo or some of the other?
Yeah, it's the last one I looked at, and this matches almost the browser category. Google Chrome for browsers and Google search is 90%, over 90%. Very small percentage use Bing or God forbid Yahoo or some of those others. So I'm paid to say that. But it's it dominates all search, so it's a pretty good reflection. I'd like to see one that goes through all the search engines and evaluates their databases, so you can see 100% of all search. But Google's over 90%. It owns a market. Other questions, thoughts? This is Hot Trends Visualizer. It's probably been driving you crazy up here. It's a screensaver. And it tracks real-time searches. This is what people are typing in within the last, I think there's a 90-second delay on this. And you can make it your screensaver and drive people absolutely crazy during presentations. So you can set it up. It can be 4 blocks or, in this case, I think 25. But just Google Hot Trends Visualizer and download it. It is free, which is the right price. Google Maps. Google Maps, we're going to talk about ways you can use them. And then I think I'll demo how to use Google Maps up on my page, MikeReilley.com. I've got some data up there that you can take and map in Google Maps. How many of you have used Google Maps before? mymaps.google.com. Okay, good. Yeah, it's a little more than what I typically see, so good job, professors. You're getting My Maps in their hands. This is an example of one that was done in Argentina of the floods and fires. And you think about what makes a good map. You're taking a location, you're giving people data or information. In this case, it's video or photo about this location, and information you can link off to another source. You can draw on that map. You can draw shapes. You can draw routes and lines on that map. And tell us something about that area. So google.com/mymaps will do that. And the interface improved quite a bit in 2013. If any of you used Google Maps prior to 2013, it was a real drag to put it together and couldn't do an awful lot with it. Whereas now you can load spreadsheets into it and KML files and do some really cool stuff with it. Here's an example of another one that the CBC did. It drew a map of the mudslides in Washington and also the floods. The mudslides are in brown. And then put pinpoints of different centers and help aid stations and places people could go. And safety maps like this are very, very important. If you've ever had an earthquake in your area, tornado, having these types of maps are a huge public service. This is one of my favorites from Chicago. Huffington Post Sports did this one. This is during the 2014 World Cup. They mapped out all the bars that you go watch a World Cup at, and they did the little icons. You can customize the icons. It's really easy to do by the country's flags. So you didn't get a drunk Irishman like me walking into Italy's bar and watching the World Cup. But this simple map, you can pull this together in just a matter of minutes and do some really, really cool stuff with it. Very simple, quick turn, day turn map. A little quick video I'm going to play, and it talks a little bit about Google Maps, about 90 seconds long, and how you can use it. So we'll see if we can get it to play here.
Maps are an engaging way to share data and additional context with your audience. But if you're often on a deadline and new to maps, it can seem a little daunting. But it's actually pretty easy. There's no programming required. You can get started at google.com/mymaps. Or go to Google Drive, click the New button, and find the My Maps app in the menu under More. This takes you to the My Maps editor. Let's say you're writing an article on the world's 20 best cycling cities, and you have data from a spreadsheet that you want to visualize in a map. Go to the My Maps editor window and hit Import. Then select the spreadsheet. It's going to ask you to select the column with your location info to position your place marks. Then you have to choose a column that will title your place marks, which will be under the bold text at the top of the info window when you click a place mark. Let's choose an icon to replace the red pins. Go back to the My Maps editor and under All Items, click More Icons. Here you can choose from an existing library or add your own. This one's perfect. Let's also choose a base map style. In the editor window, you can choose from 9 different styles. Finally, to embed this map, click the share link, don't forget to title it, and make your map public. Then, select Embed on my site. You'll get a window with the HTML code, which you can then paste into your source code. In the code, you can dial in the right height and width for your site. Start mapping today at google.com/mymaps.
Okay, so we'll build a map in just a little bit. We'll get our hands dirty with it. It showed that little embed code right at the end of it. Keep in mind that Google Maps aren't responsive yet, so if you have a responsive website, a site that resizes itself to fit, either the tablet or to the down to the phone screen, I would take that embed code that they give you that has a width or a height on it in pixels and run it through embedresponsively.com. It's a great little tool, free tool. You can do it with YouTube videos, you could do it with Vimeo videos, any generic iframe. And yeah, I am passing the hat, so drop your card in there, or maybe a few bucks. I take tips. And pass that. It's like being at church, man. And drop your card in there, and we'll do the drawing in a little bit. Whoever winds up with it in the back row, if you could bring it down, I'd appreciate it, because I can't lose my World Champion Cubs hat. So embed responsively. Embedresponsively.com. You can take this embed code and drop it in there. I'll demo it in just a minute when we create our map. You can create and manage your maps. It mentioned 2 different ways. Google.com/mymaps. You can also go in to Google Drive and access it through there. It's where you access Fusion tables, and if you're doing Google Forms, any of your Google Docs, things like that. Really handy way to go back, and you can go back and edit your documents as well. If you're interested in tutorials, more tutorials on Google My Maps, g.co/newslab has a whole bunch of data sets. I give you a few on my site just that you can get you started, but this page will really take good care of you. g.co/newslab. Okay, so let's hop back in. I'm gonna escape out of this. And I'm just going to launch a new window because it froze up. Okay, so again, this is your interface for google.com/mymaps. You can go back and you can look up other maps that you've created in the past. This was a little KML file that I uploaded of Chicago neighborhoods. And you can take your database or your spreadsheet and load the locations in. And this is the one that they just showed you on the cycling cities. You have a city, a location of the city, city and country in this case. It gave a ranking to them. You could also do this as, giving it a grade, A, B, C, or D. And then notes, and what appears in the notes is the information that appears under the location on your map. And to create a new map, very easy, just boom, like they showed you. And you import it, and you can select from your computer. You can just drag and drop it in. It'll take Excel files, KML files. In this case, it's a CSV file that I'm bringing in. comma-separated values data. And let me go find it, bike cities. I have another one too up on the site. It's got mapping out cities and what salary you need to earn to buy a home in it. And if we got a little time here, we'll do that one as well. And it asks you, how to position your place marks, position them by location, and then what do you want to appear on the title? In this case, the city name. You could pick something else. It always gives you a little hint as to what's under that as well. So just click there. It'll take a minute to process it. You can always go back into the spreadsheet and update it, which is really nice. A step that's often forgotten, and this is something I always crack the students that I'm working with on, is they forget to title and to do a description of their map. And typically, you're going to do a short description, 5 to 7 words, and your description, a couple sentences, and then a credit too. That's the other thing people often overlook. Because people see your maps just like the same way they see your YouTube videos, 2 different ways. One, they can find it embedded on your site. 2, they can find it in search, in YouTube search or in Google search. So it's important once they get there, and in the interest of time, I'll just put garble in there. And that's a big step. So it's starting to do the locations. And we'll zip back out. Okay. Uniform style. This is one that they didn't talk about. Let's say I had given these grades instead of rankings. I can go through and pick to change the color of these to group together any of like the A level or top 10 rated or top 20 rated by just going in here and giving it an individual style. So I can change all the colors of them. That's very easy to do. Just down here under all items, I can change a color this way. But if I wanted to group them in a certain way, so I only wanted certain ones ranked high to be something else. The icons are all right down here. You can use the cycling one or the city one. You can also, under more icons, upload a custom icon as well, which is really cool. That's how I did the Google Maps with the little Google logo of where I'd been. I just uploaded the little icon. It'll take a JPEG or a GIF file. And the other step that's often forgotten is you always hit that share button once you have it ready to make public. And I think they showed you that on the video, but it's, again, I always talk about it because it's important. And your share button's right up here. Embed on my site. Now this gives you some nice embed code, this whole iframe code here. I could type 100% in here as opposed to the pixel width of 640, and it would still get me pretty close to being a responsive design. It would be flexy, but the height is distorted a little bit. It's better to run it through this little tool called Embed Responsively. And as sites started to convert to responsive design in 2011, 2012, this tool came out and became instantly popular. And they've got different categories here. You can do a generic iframe code, which would work with this map. You can do your Instagrams. Storify and things like that are already responsive. Twitter embeds. But I want to take my Google map and I want to take that embed code and drop it in here. Click embed. And it'll take a while, and once you see the map begin to show up, here's your embed code down here that's fully responsive, and it'll resize itself. Because there's nothing more frustrating than being on your phone and you go to a website and they have this really cool map embedded and it runs off the side of your screen, and then you turn it to landscape mode and it still runs off the side of the screen. It drives me batty, because this would solve that problem like that. So embed responsively, a nice little tool to use. Okay. Let's do another one. We'll play with something else. Create a new map. We'll do this one. This is a little spreadsheet of cities around the U.S. And the salary from, I think it's Zillow that did this one. whatever your salary you need to earn for that city, to live in that city. So I do it because there's kind of an interesting one in there that jumps out at you. That is a long file name. Okay, position my place marks based on location. And I'm also going to make my header based on the location as well. It always defaults to kind of the little blue pinpoints. You can also draw lines on here. If I wanted to connect these, if it was a route or something. We've used this to draw a couple of marathon maps before. The Chicago Marathon's very popular. Google Maps is a good tool for that. They actually have a little KML file that'll draw it for you on there now. It's just a little spreadsheet. But if you have to draw a walking route or a biking route or a driving route, or adding a line or a shape, a polygon or something, that's how they did the mudslides one as well. And here you have your different cities, and so you can draw around, bingo, bingo, bingo. And then you get the heck out of it. You can add more place marks, okay? And you can go around and click on these different cities and find the salary. Not too exciting. You got the city's name, and you've got a little cost there, or the cost, the salary you need to make to live there. San Francisco, pretty high, 161K. Good luck if you want to move out to Frisco. Here's something that's really cool. You can add in Google Video and photos by clicking on Add Image. You can also go in and edit any of this if I wanted to put more data in as well. Click on the little camera, and you can upload your own photos or video. You can also go in and do Google image search. It's better on the biking one to do this, because there's biking videos you can embed in there. So if I wanted to do like an overview shot of housing in San Francisco, it'll do a Google image search, embed it with the link right there for you. So now you have data and a nice little photo in it. Save it, bingo. I really like the videos in it. That's really cool as well. So a lot of power in this tool compared to what it used to be. You can also go through and just search in here for location if I wanted to add like my hometown of Lincoln, Nebraska. Go Huskers. Their last matchup with Ole Miss, they lost. Some kid named Manning was playing for them. There we go. I can't remember his name. Wait, what did he wind up doing? He did quite well, didn't he? And I can go in and just add Lincoln, Nebraska. And these are good for smaller maps. If you maybe have a spreadsheet that has, a couple thousand lines in it of data, my maps tends to chug a little bit. It may or may not be able to build it. What I would suggest doing then is using a tool like Google Fusion Tables, which can handle larger data sets. And you can take and build your map in Fusion Tables as well. My Maps is kind of an enclosed interface just for building these simple maps. It does have an API where you can take and have the application programming interface interact with other tools, which is really cool. But it's kind of closed as far as this being just a tool that you can post with. I'll show you one we did. This is a map we did with Google Fusion Tables. This is a website that I built for students that I teach in Chicago called the Red Line Project. It's news that's based off of locations off Chicago Red Line L stops. We did one on gun violence in the city. We have a lot of homicides, and we mapped out the number of homicides, and we mapped it by political ward in 2012, and then we mapped it by police district beat in 2013. And not only did we create the map, 435 people were shot and killed, or stabbed and killed, or any other way they were hit by a car or something in Chicago in this year. And we broke it down by, these are different police precincts, police districts, they're actually called in Chicago. You see the west side and the south side of Chicago. And the real power of this tool, we took a tool called Searchable Map Template. It's created by a guy by the name of Derek Eater. He's a hacker, civic hacker that's based out of Chicago. People, news outlets all over the country use this. You can download this searchable map template. It takes about 7-8 steps to build one. It's not a day-turn project. This will take you the better part of a week to do it. You can download it off his GitHub page. There's a little 7-step instruction sheet. But what it does is it makes the map searchable, and you can pick out specific demographics that you want to tie to it. You can search by date because the spreadsheet has age of victim, it has the date. You can search by a radius around a location. And I'll type this one in because this was interesting. Cornell Square Park. Anybody from Chicago that may know what Cornell Square Park and its significance is? Okay, it's a mass shooting there in 2014. 13 people were shot watching a outdoor basketball game, pickup basketball game in a park. Gangbanger drove by, fired a semi-automatic weapon into the group. People that were hit were as young as 4. Miraculously, everybody lived, but there were some serious injuries. And we wanted to see, within a 3-mile radius of this park, how many people under the age of 25 had been shot in the previous year. And as you back this out, 45 people within a 3-mile radius of this park had been shot. You know, as you begin to click on some of the dots and see the data that's pulled from the spreadsheet, you know, some of these are heartbreaking. You'll see victims as young as 4, 3 years old. They were caught typically in crossfire, in many cases gang crossfire. And you know, this took some time to build this map. The real challenging part of it was going through the database that's posted by the Chicago Police Department and making sure it was accurate. Because always be skeptical of crime data. What the Chicago Police Department had been doing with a lot of its shootings data, whether it's homicides or just shootings, if it happened on a state interstate that happens to pass through the neighborhood, it won't count it. It'll say that, oh, this is an Illinois homicide. It's not in our jurisdiction. Or if it happened under an overpass of a freeway, which happens quite a bit, oh no, that's not ours, we're not responsible for that. So they were hiding a lot of these homicides, and it took a lot of digging and fact checking, and you know, the Chicago media as a whole really puts a lot of pressure on them to make sure they're giving us accurate data. It got to the point where the Chicago Tribune was actually having a reporter full-time track and build a spreadsheet of all this. So you know, you can really use this. We used this the night it happened around 9 o'clock at night. And we were tweeting it out, the link to this map out, and saying, you know, in the past year, you know, there have been 45 people shot under the age of 25 within 3 miles of the park, and the Chicago media were picking up on it. You know, this became part of the storytelling. So, really interesting little way to tell the story. And again, this will take some programming. You have to download his tool, and you have to take your your app key from Google and drop that in there and the link to the map. But once you've built it, you can do some amazing stuff with it. So that's Google Fusion Tables. If you're in the student media session I'm doing this afternoon at 1, we're going to dive into Google Fusion Tables and play with it a little bit more in depth in there. So questions about Google Maps? Right here. Couple ways you could do it. You could give them the login, which is, you know, kind of a dangerous thing to do, because then anybody can go in and mess with it. It's always an issue with a crowdsourced map. Or you could put a Google Sheet up that you make public that they load the data into, and then you take it, edit it, clean it up, and then update the map maybe twice a day. You know, depending on, you know, how, sometimes it's, you know, even once a week. Some of the Chicago neighborhoods do that, and I think they do it every neighborhood associations do that. Every couple of days you'll go in and hit reload and it'll be updated. So I would do it off the sheets, but I have seen them where they've given the login data, and I'm not quite that trusting of any audience that they're going to do the right thing and not hack the living heck out of my account. And also, if you're working for a news outlet, I would encourage having, you know, just one account and keeping all your maps on there. It's one of the things I did at Cronkite News when I was at ASU, was they had the students putting all of their maps and story maps and fusion tables up on their personal accounts. And let's say that account goes away a year after school or something, all of a sudden we have a big blank spot in the middle of our web page that has a broken image on it. So have one centralized account that can be passed along from generation to generation of student or reporters as they come through, and can use that one account. So you have everything stored in one place. That's important too if you have to go in and make a correction on something. We had to find a student that had graduated a year and a half earlier because he had to go in and fix something on a map. And it was a small fix, but still it was important. But had we had that in one account location, we could have gone in and repaired it ourselves within a matter of minutes instead of going on a nationwide manhunt. What else? Other questions? You had one?
Yeah, I have my data in CSV file or something. How can I know that the geomapping of my location field is going to match the requirements of Google Maps? Like, there are some instructions of what is acceptable field types and that geomapping.
Sure. It'll geocode if you put in a column that has like city, state name, or country name. Be careful with abbreviations. IN for Indiana, like a postal code. Google Maps will read it as India. If you type in Washington for the state of Washington, it'll read it as Washington, D.C., not the state of Washington. So you have to do state of Washington or Washington state. What it does is it recognizes those and knows to go in and geocodes them. If you have a spreadsheet that has longitude and latitudes, it'll locate it right there, just like CartoDB or any of those mapping tools will locate it right down to the pinpoint. We got a spreadsheet of potholes being repaired in the city of Chicago. And we wanted to see where they were being repaired first. As it turned out, over a little time-lapse map, we had longitude and latitude of the exact location of each pothole being repaired. And miraculously enough, it was the mayor's neighborhood that the potholes were repaired first. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. But if you have very specific data like that, we started with a very specific spreadsheet. You can do that type of stuff with it. Not all. Like KML files are, but not all formats are. When you go in there to load the spreadsheet in, it'll tell you what formats. It was kind of faded out a little bit. It had Excel, it had CSV, there was something else in there as well. You can also just do the troubleshoot method, crack it in there and see if it'll work. I always go back and kind of zoom in if I'm doing a real specific map too, back to your accuracy question. If I load something in, I go in and that's how I discovered the state of Washington thing. I was doing a map, and it was actually fusion tables, and I was zooming in. I was like, wait a minute, the state of Washington didn't have any data in it. My chloroplex map was off here, and I found it was taking the data and dropping it under Washington, D.C. But I only did that because I went in and examined the finished map. I think too many times we get into the habit of taking the map, building it, and then boom, dropping it in our page right away. But take a little time to go through and fact check it. So zoom in. Did that pinpoint actually fall in San Jose, California, and not somewhere 30 miles down the road? And sometimes it can be a missing comma. Sometimes it can be a typo in a state name. I've seen those. If you have bad data, it'll mess up the map. So the geocoding I found in Fusion Tables is really cool because it tells you as it's loading the spreadsheet up, how many of them are ambiguous percentage-wise. So you have 30 rows that are ambiguous. You've got to go back and clean up your spreadsheet. That's one thing I like about that tool is it tells you. Google Maps doesn't do that. It's kind of hit and miss. You have to go in and kind of look at the map to do it. But Fusion Tables actually tells you that, hey, we've got some problems with this data. You might want to rethink how you've got things formatted. Other questions? We've got 5 minutes left and a big drawing coming up. Yeah. Chloroplex map, yeah. Yeah, you can definitely do a chloroplex map. You load in a KML file, and I think it's not the best one. the city of Chicago, when they give you a KML file, a choropleth map, they always give it to you in hot pink, which it just churns my stomach. It's just actually it's Pepto-Bismol pink. You have to go in and change the colors of each of these. These are Chicago neighborhoods. It's a nice little thing, but I can go in and I can change the color individually to the different shades in there, and it'll change it. I mean, other choropleth maps that are supplied to you or that you go out and find on the web hopefully don't have the ugly pink format with them. But yeah, definitely, it'll take those KML files. That's a good question, yeah. If you're creating choropleth maps and then locations within them, like this one we just did, we were starting it and we ran out of time. All the neighborhoods, and we were plotting, I think, key points of interest in the city. And then we were just going in and placing the pinpoints here. You can type in address up here, name of a building. You can type in the Meek School, it'll show up in search. So it's a very broad search field in Google Maps. You can type in an exact location, you can type in a neighborhood name, you can type in a name of a building, and it'll take you there. I can type in Willis Tower there, and it'll take you right to the Willis. I still call it the Sears Tower. Okay, we're drawing two names out. No pressure. No pressure. People are tended to pull out their phones. All right, first person. Chris Canty Sparks. Assistant professor. Congratulations. Come down afterwards. You get a Google News Lab mouse pad. Way to go, Chris. Thank you very much. Fill out that evaluation form now. We're doing this on the honor system. All right, we have one more person. Oh, Alexander Slocum. Must be present to win. There you go, Alexander. Come down when the session's done. You pick up your mouse pad at the front of the room. We'll hold them here for you. And thank you guys very much for entering. I'll stick around, and I'm around this afternoon from 1 till about 2:30 over in the Student Media Center. If you want to play around with some more stuff, or if you have questions, I'll be around. But good stuff. Great questions. Great questions. Am I on time? I'm on time.